Hi there, I'm Michelle Engel. I used to be a special education teacher, but I felt like I wanted to do more to help families. And so I decided to start my own company called Insight Ed. And there I get to educate on various topics and I get to support families through their educational journey, eventually empowering children and families. So this way I get to share my insight with you. So thank you very much for joining me today as we talk about accommodations. So what's an accommodation? An accommodation is really any change to ensure that a person gets the same access to what other people are getting. So today we're really going to focus on your child and accommodations in school. But think big here, okay? Because really accommodations can take place in your home as well as when you go out into the community. So there are many reasons for accommodations. Your child might be a unique learner, might have a physical need, maybe a disability of some sort. Really, little insider tip here, your child is not the only child in the classroom that's going to have accommodations. So don't worry about that. Lots of classrooms have like at least half the kids have accommodations. Their accommodations are individualized and extensive. Really, there's no great list that has all the accommodations you can possibly have. So really get creative and don't limit yourself. Accommodations should be really created from your child's perspective. So have some conversations with them. Ask them, what's a struggle at school? And then dig deep to see what the little thing is that's really making things difficult. If your child is not a verbal child, go ahead and do an observation or have someone do an observation in school and pick up on the emotions throughout the day just to take some notes. Also, talking about your child's day, think about the purpose of the activity as your child moves throughout the day. So, for some child, they go into English class and they want to decipher Shakespearean text, totally fine. For others, they might go into our class and their, purpose is to work parallel, parallel play, which is also absolutely perfect. But make sure the accommodation matches that purpose. When we talk about accommodations, we really talk about different types of accommodations and it helps kind of organize your thoughts. So we think of usually presentation, response, environment, and scheduling, but I really feel like there's a few more that I add in. Think of physical activity level, sensory, and then also social. So I'm going to just talk about each of those and then give some examples of each of them as we go through. So the first one is presentation. Presentation is just how the student gets the information. So think about large group, small group, and then individualized. Small group, or I'm sorry, large group would be like a lecture or a video. So an example for an accommodation there would be a teacher giving the child an outline of a lecture so that he or she could just take notes right on that paper. And then there's small group. Think of small group as reading groups, centers, lab groups, that kind of thing. An accommodation here could be maybe a child who is sensitive to hearing during center time having sound blockers on. And then individual. So individual learning might be gaining learning from text, or it could be computer-based learning, something like that, where it's just one-on-one. An audio version of a book is a great example of an accommodation there. And then two, response. So how your child responds or lets everyone know what they have learned, lets the teacher know what they've learned. So this could be, typing a paper, maybe having a word prediction software on his or her computer. That would be an example of an accommodation there. Also, you know, doing a model maybe instead of a paper for science class, something like that. And then we're going to talk about third, the environment. This is a big one. So think of physical access as a child gets into the classroom. Think of maybe a child in a wheelchair. Can that child get everywhere physically with the most independence? So can that child get to the computer station and the drinking fountain and sharpening pencils, that kind of stuff? Access the room. Also think about the door, and like emergency situations, all that kind of stuff. Want to make sure you can think of. I also like to just kind of highlight here. You also, when you're creating accommodations, want to think about the child's self-esteem. And so if a child in a wheelchair can't get to the computer station without people having to move their desks and make a big deal, you might want to change things a little bit there. And then distraction, environmental distraction. If your child is distracted by sounds or visuals, think about seating. Is front and center best? Maybe not. Maybe back of the room is best. And then I always think about the five senses. So hearing, can your child hear everything? Are they distracted by things that they are hearing? A noisy window or event. And then smelling, totally okay for you to point out that your child gets really irritated by strong perfumes or something like that, and let that teacher know not to wear that. Um, and then taste. If you have one of these ones, they don't like to eat anything that isn't like smooth or crunchy or whatever the phase is that they're going through. Um, totally okay to have an accommodation that provides snacks throughout the day. So maybe your child has a backpack with a bunch of snacks that he or she will eat. Um, touch. Think about this in a couple different ways. So some kids are really sensitive to like textures and touch, even paper. Touching paper might be irritating to them. Um, or think about being touched. Like maybe a child doesn't want to be touched. And so writing an accommodation or having an accommodation for that is definitely appropriate. And then sight. There are many reasons to consider sight, when you're thinking about accommodations. A child might be overwhelmed if there's too much on a paper, say a worksheet. And so having an accommodation to have less visual stimuli on a worksheet would be absolutely great. Also think about children who have visual impairments. There's lots of large texts, available, or audiobooks there too. And then timing and scheduling, we're on to 4, which is really 2 things, right? Timing and scheduling. Timing is thinking about how long something might take. So giving a child extra time on a test or assignment might be an accommodation there. Scheduling might be something that, something that you're regularly putting in or taking out throughout the day. That could be maybe, going to the bathroom every hour, having a schedule for that. And 5th, activity level. So I think of this inward as well as outward. So if your child is maybe has some physical health issues, might need to take a nap or a rest time, at noon in order to make it through the rest of the day. Or maybe your child is really wiggly and needs to run around the school a couple times in the middle of the day. And then I also think of outward activity level. Is the activity level in the classroom really, loud and there's a lot going on? Maybe your child needs a quiet space to work for a little while. Sensory. Sensory accommodations are really one of my favorites. They're amazing, and they do fit in everywhere else, but I feel like that taking time to think about that is really important. So some kids are really sensory sensitive, but sensory breaks and stimuli can help lots and lots of different kids. So having like a nice smell to like essential oils, right? To kind of pick up the pace and give them some energy or to relax them. Sensory breaks such as large motor activities helps a lot of kids. Social emotional. So this is the kind of the last category I wanted to talk about. So social emotional, I was thinking of self-esteem, and taking time to think about this through accommodations is just a really great strategy. Think about your child. If your child is struggling in school, their self-esteem is taking a hit, right? And so working in something like um, extra an extra task or a job in the classroom might make them feel a little better, or 10 minutes a week with their teacher, just one-on-one, to hang out and talk. Um, and then behavior and social skills. Kids have, lots of kids need some help in that area. Reward systems, visual schedules, checklists, cue cards, all of those can really help in that area. Now, I wanted to emphasize that during the time that you're talking, it might be an IEP meeting or a 504, just parent-teacher conference, and you're talking about accommodations, make sure that you're understanding what that accommodation is. So if they say, oh, extra time, well, extra time when and where? I want you to be able to have that visual. Make sure you understand those. Also, it's great for you to come in with some ideas for accommodations. That's wonderful. But if you just go to the team or the teacher and say, I know my child is struggling here in this area. Can we talk about an accommodation? Two heads are better than one, right? So that's a great time to just, chat about that and create some. And then one final thought is that accommodations really should be taking place every day throughout the day. Accommodations really aren't effective if they are just done like at the test day or whatever. That can actually cause a little extra stress, and you don't want that. So, thank you very much for hanging out today, for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again. All right, bye bye. Thanks.